everybody, to another episode of Past the Wire TV. I am John Stettin. I am here with my co-host, Jeff Mets. We have, again, an interesting show for everybody out there. We're going to talk a little bit about some recent racing news. And then we're going to talk about three very interesting big races that are coming up on Saturday. We've got the Santa Anita Handicap. We've got the San Felipe. And we've got the Tampa Bay Derby. Two of those are Kentucky Derby prep races for the 3-year-olds. And one of them is, one of the top races for the older or handicap division. So we've got three interesting races. All three have some interesting horses worth talking about, and will give us a glimpse into some big races in the future. And we've got an interesting occurrence on the news front as well that we're going to touch base on. How are you this evening?
Doing good, thanks. Doing good. Interesting. Right before I joined you here, the interesting thing came about too is there's protesters at Golden Gate today. There's people laying on the track that they're wanting to make their point that they want to ban horse racing. But we'll save that for another day, and we'll see how that plays out. But that's just one of those things as we get ready to do our show. Craziness is always happening in our industry, and we like to bring it to the people. So, but yeah. we'll get on a few of our topics for tonight and see how we roll.
I did see that news, and somebody, and not to be disrespectful to anybody, but somebody put a very funny post on social media about it, and their comment was, "Well, it'd be an easy way to stop them by just run a race, and they'll go away for sure," which. Could be in bad taste, so maybe we're not condoning that or suggesting, offering it as probably some humor.
Yeah, a lot of different ways you can go with that. So, right. So what did you want to delve into today?
Well, as you're aware, I wrote the first article in a series of articles that I'm writing about race fixing and cheating in the sport of kings. And the first article I did was a historical piece about a scandal in Saratoga years ago that involved some of the top name riders. And in the context of that article, I mentioned a lot of different ways that it's relatively easy for riders who are less than 100% honest for whatever reason to alter the outcome of a race. One of the things that I omitted and was probably remiss in doing was weight and riding without the proper assigned weight. And there's an apprentice rider who won the Eclipse Award, Crispin, at Laurel Park, who was just suspended recently for weighing out, and that's weighing in rather, without the proper amount of weight being carried. And a lot of people wrote about it. A lot of people spoke about it. And I personally find it very, very troubling because it's something that I'm afraid might go on a little bit more than we realize. And the most frustrating part to me about it, Jeff, is that, racetracks put on a product that they expect and encourage us to gamble, or as I like to say, invest on. Okay. And if I'm investing my money and putting my money into something, I consider it a stake in the game. So I expect things to be as on the up and up as possible. Now, you and I both know that there are a litany of issues in thoroughbred horse racing that are very complicated to correct, police, and eradicate. This is not one of them. This is something that's very easy to fix, very easy to prevent, and it wasn't done. And it seems like, from what I've been able to read and research on it, that it wasn't done over time and repeatedly. It's not like just one race, this rider came back and the weight was off. It's a couple of races, and it dates back quite a while. No excuse for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, you talk about the apprentice rider. And so not only is he already getting 5-7 pounds, probably he was winning a lot of races, so he's probably down to 5 pounds, but he's already got a 5-pound apprentice. And now if he weighs in another 5 pounds light, that's like a 10-pound spread. And the fact that he was light enough to do it, I mean, that makes it tough. One of the things that just some of our audience are very astute players and they know the game, and others are maybe just jumping on for the first time. But just a quick little synopsis of the process is, so the jockeys weigh in the jocks room before they leave to go out to their horse. So they weigh in with their boots and their saddle and their equipment. And then the valet goes and puts the weight on the horse, the saddle and the pad and everything. And then after they ride the race, they come back and they have to weigh out. But one of the things that happens is they put lead weights, if they need to make the weight, they put lead weights in the saddle. And they also, after they weigh out after the race, like you said, weigh in to make sure they carried the proper weight. So the reason you see the jockeys go to the scale after the race is to make sure they carried the proper weight all the way throughout that race. From the time they got on to the time they finished, they carried the proper weight. Now, the other thing is, a lot of times when those jockeys are weighing in after a race, they have their helmet on and they have their safety vest on. So that's a couple of pounds already. So in this instance, when we're talking about this jockey being 5 pounds light, possibly, in some of the articles I've read, you figure he probably was weighing in with his helmet and he probably had a safety vest on, which they give you about a pound allowance for the safety vest, which is fair for safety for the jockeys. But what I'm thinking is, if he's going out, if he's weighing back in 5 pounds light, he was probably definitely carrying 10 pounds less than some of the other horses. And I could see over time, not only was he a good jockey and he was hot and he won the Apprentice of the Year award for the Eclipse Awards, but he, riding at a 5 to 10 pound disadvantage. Now, how long this was happening, I'm not sure. Some of the things that I kind of looked at, they were saying he had kind of been warned. They were saying, hey, you need to, be very cognizant of your weight and you're not carrying less than you should be, or that will be a problem. And then I think they, I don't want to say whistleblowers, but I think some people caught on to it and they said, hey, you need to investigate this and you need to check on this. And it was happening. And then when they caught it, they addressed it with a 30-day suspension. And, I don't want to throw anything out there to people, but I think you got clerk of scales that have to watch that weigh in, and they need to be like you said, there's points where you need to stand up and say, hey, we got a problem here. And then in this case, it did become a problem because they actually disqualified the horse and took the money away.
Right. And that goes back to something we discussed on an earlier show. When there's a disqualification after the fact, doesn't help the bettors who invested money in what they would like to believe is a clean, fair race. Now, my question to you as a trainer is this, and this is something that I've seen debated even by trainers, and I guess, a lot of people have a different outlook on it. How much difference in a race, 1,000-pound horse, 1,100-pound horse, 110-pound jockey, how much difference does it really make, in your opinion, a 5 or 10-pound difference in what a horse is carrying?
My personal opinion is that the weight is carried right over the withers of the horse. It is like 1% of their body weight. 10 pounds is like 1% of a 1,000-pound animal. So I just think that it's not that big a deal because it's carried very well. But at the end of the day, you see light apprentice riders, and it's almost not even the weight factor. It's just that they run free and they just feel, I guess it is a lighter feeling. So I hate to contradict myself, but the thing is, also when an apprentice rider is winning and they start winning a lot of races, whether he's a journeyman or an apprentice, when they start winning, they get into that confidence groove. And when they start winning, they produce more wins. Like you said, when we talk about the bettor who's getting, the raw end of the deal here, the horse that ran second now becomes promoted up to the winner because of the disqualification once things go through the stewards process and all that. But the poor bettor, the winner loses the money, loses the purse money, but the bettor that had the second horse, he no longer gets to cash his ticket because now it's become a winner. So that's where it's a bummer on the betting end of things.
Right. And I agree wholeheartedly with that, but I'll even take it a step further because in my opinion, when you do something like that, not only does it hurt the bettor, all the bettors, but it hurts owners in ways that you can't even really quantify, because when a horse is not carrying the proper weight, and like you said, running free or running lighter, he may have more speed than he might have had with the proper assigned weight. that affects the pace, that affects the closers, that affects the other speed, that affects everybody. So I could be an owner and, you know, that could affect me in a way that I'll never know because, hey, my horse might have been able to, you know, be closer and not have as much pressure without that other horse running, you know, up on the pace, or, you know, there could have been more pace and I could have closed. There were so many things that could happen, and it can affect, you know, there's so many dynamics to how the pace and a race plays out. So anytime it's not on the up and up in a game that we'd like to think is a skill game and has a science to it, you change everything and you put everybody at a disadvantage. Now, what's to stop racetracks? And this is what irks me, because if you care about me as a customer, the better is your customer, and you want me to wager, I want digital scales. I want the way in and the way out recorded. I want to be able to see it. I want it flagged immediately. The race shouldn't be official until the guy comes in and weighs and the weight is verified and correct. So I'm protected.
I agree. You know, what happens is in the races, these tracks are trying to make it official so quickly that as the horses gallop out, they actually have a patrol judge on the side. And if he doesn't hear an objection from the riders, by the time they pull the horses up on the backside, that race goes official before they even come back to unsaddle the horses. And I would think the owners, the bettors, the jockeys, anybody involved, an extra 1 to 2 minutes to get it right. I don't think that's a problem at all, you know, because maybe the jockey yelled and said, hey, take a look at the stretch. You know, I claim foul, or who knows what happened. The guy didn't hear him, something like that. But when they come to unsaddle, you know, they can talk to the steward, the clerk, or the scales clerk, and tell them, hey, I got impeded, I got infracted, you know, something, and they can take a look at it. I don't think they need to rush to put these official signs up and the tote prices up so quickly. I think an extra 2 minutes is not gonna, you know, the bettors, they don't need to thrive every 10 minutes, another track. Yes, it's fun and exciting when you're in Vegas and races are going off left and right. But when you got a lot of money on the line for the owners, for the big bettors, and for the jockeys, because that's their livelihood, take that extra 2 minutes and just make sure everything is right. And I'm like you, we have these old-fashioned scales that kind of go like this, but the jock steps on with one foot and he's half off with the other foot. And you know, a lot of times the paddock, the clerk there weighing them in and out, he's not even looking at the scale. And I hate to say that because I got some friends that do that job, but I just know if we're going to say, hey, let's crack down on racing, let's get it right, that's an easy fix. And that's something you said earlier.
And you're 100% right about them not looking. I have a race on tape. I record a lot of the races on my DVR. And I was watching a race the other day. And, you know, this was before this whole, weight thing even came out. And I'm not going to call the guy out because it's just not my style to do that. But when the rider went on the scale, okay, he had his saddle in his hand, and with the other hand, he was fist pumping the clerk of scales, and the clerk of scales was looking at him, congratulating him, and fist pumping him. And I never saw him look at the scales. It's got that big round thing. I never even saw him glance at it, you know? Maybe he did peripherally. Maybe I missed it. But that guy was on and off the scale pretty quick, and that clerk was more interested in high-fiving or fist pumping him and congratulating him than he was in checking on the weight. And I'm sure we put down that the weight was right, and it probably was. Yeah. Now, before we move on to the big races, there's something else we got to touch on. Yeah. We were watching last week a horse that ran in Tampa, and we're going to get to the Tampa Bay Derby, Known Agenda. Mm-hmm. Who I will say, you made a very astute call on him not liking the inside of that Tampa Bay racetrack. And I think I was right a little bit in that he's a talented horse because he did win that race at Gulfstream very, very impressively, under wraps by open lengths. But I'm not sure if you're aware of the interesting aftermath that occurred following that race.
I saw that on social media. Again, I saw they wanted to put Ortiz and Paco in the ring, and televise this at night on a pay-per-view, if that's what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the
altercation at the jockey's room between the two jocks.
Right. A couple of punches that were thrown. Obviously, there's a history there because what happened in the race and generated the foul claim by Paco, I really don't understand. Okay. You know, the horse won easy, but what really made me, you know, laugh a little bit about the fight, if we can call it that, it really was a little one-sided, is on social media, the large majority of people were saying that Irad sucker punched him. And I don't agree with that, okay? Sucker punch is when the other guy has no idea what's coming, okay? Doesn't expect it. You walk up to somebody from the side, bang, you hit him. They had a heated argument on the racetrack, and they were arguing heatedly in front of the jock's room. Although Paco was sitting down, he was gesturing with his hands. Irad was in his face. If you had an argument like that on the racetrack and an incident on the racetrack, and the guy that you had it with is now in your face like this with his hands, and you decide not to get up and not to be ready, that's on you, not him. Because I had my share of fights growing up, and every one of them started by somebody throwing the first punch. That's just how fights start. That's not a sucker punch. A sucker punch is when you've got no idea what's coming and the guy clocks you out of left field. So I'm not saying he was right. I'm just saying it wasn't a sucker punch.
I think you touched on a good point there. I think it was not that race. I think it's been brewing. You know, Irad is, even when he comes to the West Coast here, you know, in California, we have smaller fields. We have 6, 7, 8 horse fields. But when you ride in those 12 and 14 horse fields like Irad does, he's used to riding tight and leaning on the horses and pushing. And when he does that in California, these guys aren't used to that. You know, everybody kind of looks out for each other. There's more room. The field size is smaller. So it's a different thing. And everybody's always complaining about Paco's rides too. So, I mean, I think it was just one of these things that came to a head, and finally they'd had enough of each other.
Yeah, no, for sure. So with that, I guess we should start in Tampa.
Yeah, I will say, obviously we'll start at Tampa, and you know, I thought this race came up pretty easy. I mean, I hate to say that, but light on talent, and I think that Candyman Rocket really stands out in the race. And with Known Agenda coming back, not so much that he kind of, you know, flatters him, but what a difference when Known Agenda got that clean outside trip. I thought, like we had talked, if he gets that and fails, then we can draw a line through him. But until he gets a fair chance, let's see what he can do.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on the same page with you. I think the race came up pretty light. I think that Candyman Rocket is very solid in here. You know, he's got that ever so valuable race over the track in the Sam Davis that he won. I don't know that this race is any tougher. If I had to look for an alternative to the short price, the horse I would look at and give an upset chance to would be Promise Keeper. Again, the Pletcher horse.
Yeah. I had Helium and Promise Keeper as my two horses underneath.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Helium's kind of a question mark coming off the synthetic. We don't really know what he's going to do. He's, you know, he's 2 for 2. He's really bred for the turf, in my opinion. But, you know, Distorted Humor and Thunder Gulch on the bottom sides are both, you know, dirt or really any kind of influence. So I guess he could be anything, and I like him as a first-time 3-year-old. I agree. He's definitely an alternative. Promise Keeper's an alternative. And an interesting horse, in my opinion, who, you know, I would never bet on, but I think it's just worth noting, would be that Super Strong, who comes in from Puerto Rico, a sloppy track, off the pace win, adds blinkers for Safi Joseph in a race they're calling a grade 1 in Puerto Rico. I don't know if it is really a grade 1. But just an interesting new face in there to maybe watch.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think we're on the same page, and you know, it was one of the bigger fields. When we go to the next couple of races, it's a little bit smaller fields.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I agree. Candyman Rocket's got to be very, very tough. It looks like he's really a cut above these.
A friend of mine said, I don't know if it was the race was weak or what, but they were commenting that they didn't think that Candyman was getting enough credit for the race that he ran last time. What do you think?
I probably agree with that, and I think it's an unfair thing for Tampa, but their races do get downgraded by a lot of players, and a lot of, even the sheet numbers and the sheet makers, are very reluctant to give those races, high figures and good figures. And, my opinion, I think it's a mistake. And one of my favorite angles, and we've spoken about this in the past, is I love horses coming off that Tampa track, like Known Agenda and others that just, I think it's a great track to get legged up over. If I was ever fortunate enough, or you and I were ever fortunate enough to have a horse that was on the Derby trail, I'd have no qualms about prepping him or Tampa, knowing that even if he doesn't like it, when we get to some of those other tighter tracks, it's doing some good.
I hate to keep going back to Known Agenda, but he ran like he wasn't in quicksand anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I got him fit. So if we look at the other 3-year-old race out in California, who did you like there?
Let me bring it up, because I do better, and I'm actually.
Yeah, you got it. I'll just go with a couple of mine. So I'm a chalk player. I hate to say it, but I mean, until the favorites get beat, you got Life is Good. He was touted even before he ran his first race. Now I worry the farther they go, although last time, the second horse was gaining on him. He looked like he was going to catch him, and he just, he won it, but almost, I don't know if Mike Smith rode him too confident and he let him just ease to the wire because there's bigger things down the road, or he just, he's so fast that maybe he, was getting tired. But this will be a good test, even though it's a small field, 7 horses. I think that you got a solid field in this one. And I'm going to take a flyer and go with Medina Spirit in here. That's the horse that was closing on Life is Good. They both come from the Bob Baffert barn. And I guess the fact that my son gows Medina Spirit might give me a little bias, but, I followed Bob for a long time. I know him. We have a few mutual friends, and I've just always, shot the breeze with him, and he's an old Turf Paradise guy, and I've raced horses at Turf Paradise, so we go back to the Arizona days. But I think it's a good race, and I think that it might be a rematch of that Life is Good and Medina Spirit, unless you saw something in there that jumped out at you.
I did, and I'll talk about that in a second. But when it comes to Bob, let me tell you, I love Bob, and he's always been very, very nice and very, very fair with me, as has his wife, Jill been. Okay, I just really get along with them, and I think the world of both of them. And in some of my racing conversations with Bob and a couple of interviews I've done with him, obviously as a student of the game and a fan of the game and a handicapper, when I do those interviews and have discussed races and racing with him, I absorb it like a sponge. Okay. And there's something he told me a year or two ago that stayed with me, and I know he does this, and I know it works, okay? And we all know that he's very good at pointing these horses for races. Now, I agree, Life is Good, I have very good reason to believe, is the horse that they liked the best early in the year coming out of that barn, okay, in the barn. I think they thought he was their best, 3-year-old. And I believe they still think that. Now, he won like the Next Coming, first time out, like a lot of Bob's horses do when they're good, One of the things he likes to do with these horses that he really likes is he likes to run them, I don't want to say short, but not fully cranked, because he likes to see if they'll lay down and dig in and show that grit and heart and toughness to gut one out when they're not fully cranked up. And there have been times where I have watched races, and Life is Good's last race was one of them, where I watched the race and I remember the conversation. I'm like, I know what you're doing. Okay. You're getting that grit, that you're seeing if he's got that fight. And I think he showed that, hey, I wasn't ready to go, but I won on my class and talent, and I'm ready to fight. And now I think he'll be cranked up a little bit more, a little bit better, and we'll see something a lot closer. I'm not saying he's going to win by open lens, but a lot closer to that first performance where he was ready.
And my hope is with Medina Spirit, you know, he just would not let those horses by. They came at him and he just kept sticking his nose out. And now I hope he doesn't bounce off of such a big, hard effort.
Right. And the horse that I like, believe it or not, who is one of my top Derby prospects, is the horse that he beat, Roman Centurion.
And he's drawn, you know, he's drawn to the outside. It's not that big a field. So I think he'll be okay there. He's number 7. He's got Hernandez back aboard. He's ridden him on all of his starts. So I think he's going to be well placed and right there in the thick of things.
Yeah, you know, let me tell you what it is I like about him. He's very intriguing to me. And when I say I like him, I don't necessarily think that he's the winner on Saturday. But I think he's a true Derby horse and a true mile and a quarter horse. And I think he's improving and the kind of horse to watch for the Derby. First off, I think Empire Maker is an underrated sire who for some reason never really got the right chance over here. And I don't know why that is. I think they gave up on him a little too soon. But that aside, you know, first time out, he ran okay to Life is Good. He's not that kind of sprinter. You know, he's an Empire Maker. They're generally not sprinters. So he ran like an even race, 10, 12 lengths back the whole way, going 6.5 at Del Mar. He stretches out to a mile and a 16th, and he wins easy going away. Off that race, they throw him to the wolves, so to speak, in the Grade 3 Robert Lewis, okay? If you watch that race, he was laying way back and didn't even look like he was going to really get involved. He made a big wide move where Frank Miramati, the announcer, even said, wow, look at this move. Roman Centurion is sweeping to the lead, but he never quite got to the lead. He made that big wide move, got there, and then kind of hung a little bit. But at the end, when he changed leads, was surging again and running at Medina Spirit. But, you know, some of those Bob horses, you just can't get by them. They dig in and they fight, and they don't want to let you by. And, you know, he had, in my opinion, every right to be a little tired after that big wide move. I think he'll be a little tighter off of that, a little bit more experienced off of that. And I expect him to go forward and be a force. Maybe not so much Saturday, but definitely going forward. If the race on Saturday, if the San Felipe was a mile and an 8th as opposed to a mile and a 16th, I would say, yeah, Saturday he's a must-use in my opinion. But I think the mile and a 16th is going to be a little bit tough for him. And I just think Life is Good is probably just a little too fast for him right now under the conditions that they'll have Saturday. So that's kind of how I see it. But I think those are the 3 that bear watching. But I'm with you as far as the favorite goes. I'm not a believer in Dream Shake, Peter Urton's horse that won so impressively first time out in the race. I think that's the race that Bezos horse was in that was supposed to be the best thing. Right. I think he actually won that race very, very easily at 20-1, made that big explosive move. One of the angles I'm against Jeff, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but off the pace sprinters that win big with a big move going 6 or 6.5 or 7, first time they stretch out to 2 turns, I like to bet against them because in my mind, they're not going to have that same kick going longer that they had going shorter. I'm much more inclined to back a sprinter with speed going long that's going to be on front to carry that speed than I am an off the pace sprinter going long that first time out. Any?
Yeah, I definitely, I know what you mean. So what I think happens is that sprinter stretching out, when they get to the lead, I think they get brave, they get to breathe a little deeper, and the pace is about a second slower. You know, instead of a 22 opening quarter, you're at about a 23, maybe more. So he's getting deep breaths, and if he's out there by himself, he just gets more relaxed, more confident, and he can carry that speed because he doesn't get as tired. These horses that make that big move sprinting, sometimes what happens is if they're back, they're going to be a little closer naturally going long because the pace is going to be a little slower. But what happens is when they try to make their kick, it's sometimes the sprinter has gotten away. You know, they just don't slow down on the front end. And although they close, their close isn't as effective because when those horses are closing, a lot of times they're passing tired horses and then they get up at the wire, or they, you know, pass the tired horses at the 8th pole or the 16th pole and they go on and win convincingly. But if the horses are going a mile and they don't seem to get tired, they make that move. And a lot of times you'll see it from the 3/8 to the 8th pole. And then they just kind of hang because they can't, unless the rider times it just right, or the race falls apart, like 2 or 3 horses go to the lead. If the pace falls apart, then that closer can come. But if you see, like you said, a sharp sprinter coming, you know, stretching out for the first time, especially if they're lone speed, which, you know, you and I, I'm sure, are on the same page. Lone speed's dangerous because if nobody goes with them, they're just going to keep going. They're not going to get tired. And I think that's where what you're saying is that sweeping, closing, sprinter type move sometimes isn't as effective going long.
For sure, for sure. Now, the big cat.
So we talked about the Tampa, well, actually Gulfstream. Gulfstream for California horses, Gulfstream is deep. So
Right.
I in passing, I had a short conversation with Eric Kruljak. He's got Kiss Today Goodbye. And he's got Money Mike Smith back aboard. And he went out there. It was his only mount at the Gulfstream. Right. And he went out and rode him. But he said his horse, it was deep. He just never handled it. And that was that. Now, I am very impressed with Maxfield. And I don't know if you know the story, but I was curious why they didn't want to go the route of going to Saudi or Dubai. I know he's owned by Godolphin. Maybe that played into it. But the fact that he's 5 for 5, and he looked great schooling this morning, by the way. He was schooling in the paddock this morning, and he looked great. So he hasn't done anything wrong. He's come back, and he's doing well. So, again, like I said, I hate to jump on the favorite, but Maxfield is who I look for.
I'm going to take a shot against Maxfield, and I'll say that I'll preface that with I think the world of him. I think he's super talented. I rated him very high on the NTRA poll, which I vote on every week. I think he's certainly one of the top older horses in the country, but I think he's a bet against on Saturday, and I'll tell you why. And I got a world of respect for Brendan Walsh as well, the trainer. But here's where I think he might be a little bit vulnerable. Although he's bred to go 1.25 miles and to excel at 1.25 miles, he's never done it. Okay. And his entire career, it looked like they were trying to rush him to make the Derby. Didn't work out, got hurt. They took their time bringing him back. They brought him back nice with those 2 easy races at the fairgrounds. Now, 2 races and somewhat close together, and now they're shipping him across country and somewhat throwing him to the wolves over a new track. I think they're throwing a lot at this horse who has a history of maybe, having some injuries and some, soundness issues. He's missed a lot of time from the racetrack. So I think if we're ever going to catch him at a vulnerable point, it might be on Saturday under these new conditions. I think they might be asking a little too much, a little too soon. And I think he happens to be catching a horse that's not really on the radar yet, who I loved last time when he won. And I think he can absolutely win right back. But John Sheriff's horse, Express Train, is a very interesting horse, in my opinion. Just looks like he's loaded with talent. He runs that second to Charlatan after they took him off the grass and brought him back as a 4-year-old, and then he just exploded in the San Pasquale. And Sheriff is a very patient guy, brings him along right. The horse has always shown, potential and ability, and I just think he's getting really good at the right time. He's got the home field advantage, and I think he's going to be a surprise for Maxfield and give him a lot more than they expect him to give Maxfield. And I would actually give him the edge at the 1.25 mile on Saturday. But if I'm wrong and Maxfield wins, I mean, he is 5 for 5. It's not going to be any surprise.
Right.
But I think this horse can beat him on Saturday.
Another horse that shows up every time, at least recently, is Tiz the Magician. He's been, his last 4 races have been really good, and he's been right there with John Sheriff's horse last time. So I think those are couples that could have that home court advantage, like you said, against Maxfield. And we'll see how it plays out, but it's going to be a good day of racing. Santa Anita's got a lot of stake races. The weather's slated to be good, which is 90% of the time it's good in California. And I think they're going to have a great day of racing. So we got a lot of jockeys coming into town to ride these horses. And a few trainers have come in, Chad Brown, Todd Pletcher. So I saw Bill Mott had a horse on the track today. So, yeah, it's going to be a good day of racing.
Yeah, they've got a mandatory payout of their pick 6. So the pools will be big. You've got quality racing all day. You've got big races at Tampa. They've got the Gotham at Aqueduct, which used to be a big Kentucky Derby prep and kind of lost a lot of luster, but it's still, good racing at Gulfstream. Big Saturday this Saturday. So a lot of action.
And it's funny, having the Kentucky Derby back in May again. It's just around the corner. It's only a couple of months away. So
we're kind of midway through the preps and the point races now, and they're starting after this weekend. I'll say they're really starting to sort themselves out, and we'll have probably a realistic picture of who's looking good and who's.
I agree, and now the big point races are coming along. So like you said, it's almost like a win and you're in. So yeah.
Chuck's was very impressive in the Fountain of Youth. Greatest Honor looked really, really good. He really did. He looked.
Yeah. So the 2-year-old champ. He's back.
Yeah. Oh no, that's Essential Quality. That was Oakland.
Essential Quality. Okay. Gotcha.
Chuck's horse in Florida looked.
Oh yeah. I watched that race because I know you like the turf horse in there. I watched him. He just didn't seem to do it. No, you take a chance with those horses, and you just don't know. But no, I thought that horse won real nicely, and so he's definitely on the right road.
The turf horse did me a favor. I crossed him off my Derby list.
There you go. So,
he's done.
All right.
All righty.
Always a pleasure. So we'll keep reading our fan mail, our emails, our hate mail, whatever it is. We'll get to the things that people want to talk about. We'll dive into the topics that sometimes people don't want to touch on, but we're willing to dig in and take a deep dive on and give our viewpoints. So, John, any final words?
No, let us know your thoughts. And, we welcome all the comments. And if you don't have any hate mail and you have a horse racing show, you're doing something wrong. You got to have.
There you go. Good deal. Well, until next time, guys.
All righty. Ciao for now.
See you later.
Reached the starting gate. It's post time. Home front, the favorite comes forward.